I think we are live. So, hello everybody. Welcome to the second session of Knowledge Plus series. Today, the talk is going to be quite interesting in terms of blending science and style. Today's panelist and the speakers will be moderated by none other than Nilesh Titte. Nilesh Titte has been an educator at Bharati Vidyapeeth. He's also my colleague at the International Association of Contact Lens Educators, as well as he's the consultant to Bosch & Lomb, and has a very keen interest as far as optometry education is concerned. So over to you, Nilesh, to moderate the session. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lakshmi, for having me here once again. It's amazing to be a part of such discussions, And today, I think this is going to be a very, very exciting topic, right? And there are some questions which are very intriguing. I always keep thinking about this. For example, what came first, chicken or egg? What is more important, the engine of the car or the features of the car, right? What is more important, hardware or software? And similarly, what is more important in optometry practice, is the science or the style? And I think this is exactly where you guys hit the nail in terms of selecting this particular topic. And I'm sure this is going to be very, very interesting. And maybe towards the end of this, we'll probably have an answer which is better, or whether both are equally important. And I think Nielsen and Manav are going to talk us through that. So before we proceed, just quickly, how we are going to go about this particular session. We'll start with Nielsen, who's going to talk slightly more about science, and then we'll follow that up with Manav, who's going to speak about the style element. And towards the end of it, we will also have Rushit and Ananta in a panel discussion where all your questions will be answered. And if you have any comments, if you have any questions, please send them on the Facebook chat, as well as if you're on the Zoom, you can put it in the Zoom chat. And I'm really looking forward to this particular session, right? So guys, if you're ready, let me take this opportunity to introduce Nielsen a little bit more formally, though we've always been informal, right, Nielsen? So I think he at this point of time deserves to be introduced more formally. So Nielsen has graduated from the University of New South Wales. He comes from down under Australia, right? He also completed his master's in public health at the University of New South Wales. He's actually, a third generation optometrist and overall experience of 17 years. And first 10 years, I think he spent he gave his services towards not-for-profit eye care organizations at a senior level management professional. He has trained over 700 optometrists. I think, Nielsen, that number is underestimated. I think you've trained more than that. We used to have such amazing fun when we worked together in terms of EPEPs and the presbyopia education programs and all. So we had some wonderful memories and such great times. And I can assure you that Nielsen is a real good speaker, and you're going to enjoy his talk. So Nielsen, over to you. And I'm really sorry that you had to lose the test match series in Australia, but can't help now.
I thought we agreed that we're not talking about cricket.
No, I didn't.
Well, thank you, Nilesh and Lakshmi, for the opportunity to speak to my colleagues and friends in India that I've known for quite some time. And as Nilesh mentioned, optometry is one of the few healthcare professions where we actually combine fashion and clinical care. So today I'd really like to talk a little bit about how do we marry the two? How do they work together, and our role as optometrists in this process? So before I start, I'd just like to acknowledge a good friend and colleague of mine, Mr. Tim Thurn, Director of Professional Services for Essilor in Australia and New Zealand. Tim and my colleague, who has since passed, Dr. David Wilson, used to travel quite extensively for the Varilux Academy and education programs at the Brian Holden Institute. So Tim has kindly shared some slides that we presented in the past, which you'll see in a moment. Just briefly, a little bit about my background. Nilesh touched on it. my family have a practice in Perth, Western Australia called Melville Optical Clinic. So I'm currently the owner and director of that practice. I'm also working with a group called Enthalmic. They're a startup organization in vision science and contact lens research. A real up and coming organization that you'll see a lot and hear a lot more of in future. Also doing some work with charities and the new optometry school that has started in Western Australia as of this year. As Nilesh mentioned, I'm a third generation optometrist. My grandfather graduated from the Bombay College of Optometry in 1957. And my father is his 50th year as an optometrist this year. He was at the City University in London. My wife and my sister are optometrists as well. So we have a lot of optometry background. But the biggest or the best news coming out of India in recent times for me was the recognition of optometry as part of the National Commission for Allied and Healthcare Act in 2021. This was a dream of the late Professor Brian Holden, who would be absolutely thrilled that optometry has received this recognition. But now the hard work starts, and I think some of the points that I'll raise in this presentation about the duty of care of optometrists to educate the patients and elevate the profession is really important, and how we might go about that. It will take time to change the behavior and the attitudes of consumers, but it's important to start now. So just briefly, some of the learning objectives in this presentation. We'll look at the scientific and clinical considerations in a fashion retail environment. And we'll look at how we determine opportunities to prescribe solutions based on a customer's needs, as well as clinical findings that you'll find within in the examination room. Also understanding the importance of history taking and clinical examination, and the importance of as-worn progressive lenses in fashion frames. So in the clinic that we have in Perth, in Western Australia, we do prescribe these frames. We Tom Ford, there's Maui Jims, Lafont, Coco Song. There may be some brands that you're familiar with in India as well. Often the trends are larger frames now. We don't fit so many compact design frames anymore. Larger frames tend to sit on the cheeks of patients. It's difficult to adjust pantoscopic tilt. We often have patients with high scripts wanting large frames. We're finding a lot more patients want acetate frames, so like this Tom Ford or the Coco Song. So those present challenges in terms of fitting heights and adjustments. So Manav will discuss a little bit more about style, but there are some important considerations that when patients choose frames, what we need to consider as practitioners. And I've put a picture here of a person wearing a rather exaggerated frame, but we can't control the fashions. And as practitioners, we have to look at the way these glasses or particular frames fit patients, and how, as the practitioner, we need to take control of the situation and ensure that the person has the optimal vision, that the best vision that they can expect from the frames, because a person essentially wants to come to you with a particular style in mind, and it's your role to actually provide them with good vision. So essentially, there is tremendous opportunity for optometrists to guide this process. So initially, a person will come in with an identified need. They want a new style, their vision has changed, and it is up to the optometrist to really understand what the person's needs are, conduct an examination, provide solutions to them according to their needs and the findings in the clinical examination, and then guide or inform the patient in terms of the most appropriate choices. So that will often allow you to differentiate yourselves if you are able to really master these 4 areas, to differentiate yourselves in a very competitive market in terms of providing the appropriate vision care for your patients. if you get this right, ultimately you'll be developing lifelong relationships with your customers. Your business will grow with referrals and word of mouth, essentially. And you'll get a sense of professional satisfaction, because ultimately, if you feel that if the patient does dictate the way they want to look and you aren't considering the optical factors, then you are setting yourself up for some difficult times in a clinical sense. So talking about style and science, style, we're talking about the retail fashion side of things. We also then blending it with the science, which is the clinical optics. And in between, we have something called the patient journey. And I'll talk to you a little bit about that. That's something that I have taught quite extensively with Tim in the past, about how there's different touch points that a patient goes through and how we may influence them as a practitioner. So a really important point is that what I've written down there is that the best clinical refraction is pointless if spectacles aren't fitted, measured, and dispensed correctly. So fitting, dispensing, and measuring are absolutely critical in guiding, achieving success for your patients. So I mentioned the patient journey. If we break up the patient's, say, touch points with your practice, prior to their consultation, they may go online and search for your practice, read a little bit about you. They might book their appointments online. They'll come to your reception area or wait for their eye test. Then in the consulting room, we conduct the eye test. And then in the dispensary or I suppose the shop floor, we do the handover. We can demonstrate products and then reinforce some of the messages that we described or we identified in the two previous phases. Personally, in our practice in Australia, our optometrists are involved in both, primarily the consulting room and the dispensary. We like to sort of take that journey forward across as many of this as possible, so that the patient has continuity, and that whatever we've discussed in the consulting room, we continue through into the dispensary. Okay, so some of the things that consumers want from you as the practitioner, as the expert in optics and clinical care, is to prescribe a solution based on their needs. Really understanding what they want to use their glasses for, understanding what do they use their eyes for, is absolutely critical in what you recommend for the person. Then showing them the benefits and value of their prescription is also another important factor. So demonstrating, using tools to actually show the patient what is the benefit of some of the things that you're prescribing and recommending, so they can almost touch and feel some of those things before they purchase them, is absolutely critical to success. And then at the end, we always offer the patient a choice, and we give them the options and we lay them out clearly for them so that they can choose what they feel is most appropriate for them. So I'll spend a little bit of time now just talking a little bit about the consultation room and how we, as an optometrist, you demonstrate your skills. But before I do, I'd like to just talk a little bit about refraction versus prescription. Okay, so when we do a prescription, you often see you have your distance, your near prescription, and it looks essentially like this. But this is essentially just a set of numbers. But these set of numbers are prescribed or based on parameters of the patient's eyes, their refraction based on the curvatures, the length of their eye. But it's not a prescription that is adapted or I suppose tweaked according to what they need their spectacles for. So that is something that we, as an optometrist, need to do a little bit of detective work. We need to identify that problem and recommend appropriate solutions. So a key point is that, are we just selling glasses, or are we making recommendations based on clinical findings? So this is where we often, practitioners, especially in Australia, that they don't like to get involved in what they feel is the selling or recommending, because they feel like they have too much of a retail sort of flavor to what they do. They want to be the clinician. However, if we conduct a clinical exam and we identify key pieces of information that we can then provide a professional recommendation, that line is less blurred. It becomes a professional recommendation. And one of the most important pieces that gets overlooked is the history and symptoms. I actually spend about 15 minutes. In Australia, the eye test takes about 30 minutes, and I spend often about 15 minutes talking. Often get in trouble for running a little bit late, but I really find it's critical to understand the patient, build some rapport with them, understand their personality, their interests, what do they do for work, what are their hobbies. And while I'm understanding all these things, I actually in my mind, I'm actually building up a set of recommendations already, but prior to actually starting to examine their eyes. Many of the practices that I've visited in India in the past, this part of the examination is often sort of overlooked, or it's quite condensed. So look, taking some time understanding their ocular history, any medications that they take, their family history, their visual performance, their occupation, all these things give you an opportunity to understand what exactly a patient needs for their vision care. So again, some of these slides have a lot of detail in them, but some of the questions that you can focus on is, understanding what their previous experience is with their glasses. Do they, you can even talk about contact lenses, and I think that's something I've got Nilesh smiling, I'm sure, in terms of it's not only a spectacle solution, but also there are other options that you can recommend for them. And then when we observe a patient, we're observing their eye color, their complexion, their skin type. We ask them about their family history. Do they have a family history of macular degeneration? All these things start to tie into potential products or lens treatments, such as multi-coats or high index or blue light filters that we can recommend for a patient. Some practices in Australia recommend questionnaires, or they provide questionnaires to the patient, so the patient then fills this out prior to the examination. Me personally, I like to talk to the person, so I don't do questionnaires, but I know a lot of my colleagues in Australia do these questionnaires, so it really gives the patient an opportunity to actually articulate some of their needs and wants for their glasses or for their eye care. The eye examination, and I'll go through a few of the points that I look for when testing eyes of a patient, especially from an externals or a slit lamp. If we identify cataracts, or we see pterygiums, even pingueculae on the surface of the eye, I naturally then start to have a conversation with the patient in terms of, do you spend a lot of time outdoors? Do you spend a lot of time in the sun? What sort of sun protection do you use? Because obviously people know that UV rays can hurt their eyes and cause changes on the surface of their eyes, but often they may not be wearing a good pair of sunglasses, or they're not wearing sunglasses all the time. So you as the eye care practitioner has that opportunity to raise these points based on what you're seeing on their eye, and talking to them about it. For instance, if I do see a pingueculae, or I see a lump or a bump on their eyelid, I'll say generally to a younger person, you've got some hardening, or you've got some UV damage on the surface of your eye. You're quite young. We want to look after your eyes longer term. So have you considered wearing sun protection for your eyes? Even if in Australia, we do get a lot of basal cell carcinomas and squamous cell carcinomas. People are very sun conscious here, but one of the things is, and use sun cream, but one of the things is you can't put sun cream around your eyelids. So the eyelid is one of the exposed areas where, you can develop sun-related changes. So sun exposure, obviously we know what sun exposure can do, but I generally have 3 or 4 points that I talk to parents or children about according to their skin type, skin color, what I've seen on their slit lamp. And then I make appropriate recommendations. Do we talk about tints or photochromic lenses, polarized lenses? I talk about polarized lenses in terms of they have a filter inside them that cuts out glare. So tints, while they are UV protected, polarized lenses filter out bright reflections to give you better eye comfort. Then we then talk about multi-coats. Multi-coats is often forgotten that many multi-coats are UV protected. Some contact lenses are options because contact lenses also protect the eye from UV light. Other options are, you're talking about to patients in their mid-40s to mid-50s, and often they're using single vision lenses, where most my patients will not walk out with single vision lenses because you have a range of clear vision with single vision lenses. And often professionals in their 40s to mid-50s are using computers or particular devices. So I actually demonstrate the range of clear vision to a patient and say, does your work fall within this range of clear vision? And as they get older, that range of clear vision becomes smaller. So I actually demonstrate that to the patient so that they have the most appropriate correction for their eyes. Even from an ergonomic perspective, if they're spending a lot of time in front of the computer using single vision lenses and that that range of clear vision falls outside the computer screen, then they often have difficulty with comfort. Anti-fatigue lenses are a new or fairly rapidly growing segment in Australia, where we perform a lot of binocular vision testing and demonstrate the effect of having an anti-fatigue lens using a trial frame and different sort of powers of the anti-fatigue in the near part of the lens to show them the benefits of these lenses, especially for computer work and for children. When we talk about high index lens, talking about high index lenses and style, again, for patients that have skin issues, that have sinusitis or very sensitive sinuses that they don't like the weight, then high index lenses then come into play as well. So you often sometimes you see patients, again, an exaggerated example, wearing large frames and with a high prescription. So what I often do with these patients is I actually draw them a picture. I say, well, look, there's a plus lens, there's two triangles like this. And if we have a larger frame, we are getting more edge thickness, especially for a minus lens. If we have more lens in the frame, it adds weight. To not have a multi-coat in this day and age, if you're talking about style, is crazy. I think about our current stats are about 98% of our patients have multi-coats. They have high fashion frames, but if they have a frame that with a lens without a multi-coat, people take photos of them and the lens fills up with the flash, or they can see their reflection, or people can see their reflection in their glasses. So I talk to all our patients about these sort of things. And even the index or the charts like this, I actually show them what it would look like for them so that they can blend that style and we can show them the science. I'll just briefly talk about, I'm just mindful of time, but I'll just talk briefly about spectacle measurements. And when we dot progressive lenses, it's something that Tim, Dave, and I have spoken a lot about in the past, especially in India, that there is a lot of variability with dotting progressive lenses. You sometimes see the premium progressive lenses about 1.2 lakhs. So if you're dispensing lenses with an ink marker, that presents problems. So to fit progressive lenses correctly with mono PDs, heights, vertex distance, pantoscopic tilt to get the best performance, those are some of the things that we should really be factoring in when we are looking at dispensing progressive lenses. Aspheric lenses are critical as well to discuss with patients that have high plus prescriptions in particular to flatten the lenses so they have a better cosmesis or a better cosmetic effect as well. Fitting lenses is absolutely critical as well. So when we all know that the center of rotation rule, so we drop the optical center every 1 millimeter for every 2 degrees of pantoscopic tilt. So demonstrating your expertise and fitting spectacles correctly is absolutely critical in this day and age. I'll just touch on a few brief case studies before I wrap up, but so often we see a lot of spectacles like this with a large arm, that they're a shell frame, but often the success rate with some of these frames is challenging with a standard progressive lens, because we can't, one of the key things is being able to adjust pantoscopic tilt and the wrap angle, and vertex distance is often fixed with these sort of frames. So being able to use technology. So I use a device called the iRuler 2. It's a digital device which actually captures a lot of this information. It captures wrap, pantoscopic tilt and vertex distance, and allowing me to capture that information and send it to the lab has a tremendous success rate when you're having patients with those sort of frames coming to your practice. So some of the ingredients for success is looking at selecting the correct lens design for the person according to their needs, looking at the appropriate lens materials and treatments, and capturing accurate measurements. So that, in combination with your product knowledge from your lens company representatives, your measuring tools and communication skills, really does set you up for a happy patient. And as I mentioned earlier, demonstrate. I have all sorts of charts and samples and whatnot that I show to patients. I show them what a multi-coat is. Give them product brochures. I show them the effects of blue light and whatnot. So the patient is really able to make an informed choice to get the best benefits. And the customer is not always right. We always hear that in a retail sense, but if a customer comes in with large frames with a high refractive error, they're setting themselves up and you for headaches, for trouble. Progressive lenses with moderate to high ads into frames we can't tilt is a big issue. And, you know, patients that have a wide nose bridge or a large back vertex distance with standard progressive lenses always battle. And if you're able to identify that as a practitioner and select and guide them to choose a frame with a wider bridge, often sets them up for success. So some of the take-home messages is to really conduct a comprehensive clinical exam, especially the history and symptoms, understand the features and benefits of your lens products, make the recommendations, discuss the pros and cons with the patient, but take control, be the expert. You're an optometrist, you're well-trained, you understand these things, but you need to relate your science, your knowledge in a really simple way to your patients that they can understand. Science and style can equate, they can work together, but you need to know the limitations and inform the patient and discuss with the patient when you see some red flags that you need to warn them about that may affect their success. So attention to detail ultimately equals a patient for life. Patients that have had trouble elsewhere, you've identified some of these challenging aspects and you've corrected them, they will be your patient for life. So I hope I didn't go too late, but thank you for listening, and I'll pass back to Nilesh. And if you'd like to contact me, there's some of my details, and I'm on LinkedIn as well if you'd like to reach out and ask any questions. So Nilesh.
Yep. Thank you so much, Nielsen. That's a lovely picture at the end. I love the talk. The passion is coming through, right, as a clinician. But I also like the fact that, you know, apart from being a clinician, you're also doing a great job in counseling the patients, because I think some of us do miss that. We're very hardcore clinicians, so we don't take the time to take proper history and to recommend the right product for the right patients. So guys, if you have any questions, please put them on the Facebook chat or on the Zoom chat, and we'll take them after the next talk. Also, please wait till the end, because we have a feedback form and a survey towards the end, which you're supposed to fill up. Once you do that, you get your attendance certificate. Let's move across to the second talk, and we have Manav Chopra. Manav is currently the Senior Training Manager of Luxottica India Eyewear Private Limited. He's managing the training functions for Luxottica India with overall experience of over 16 years in the field of learning and development, across various training intensive industries. At Luxottica, he and his team, they conduct training for internal and external stakeholders. So basically the retail chair partners, we have eye care practitioners, we have optometrists. So his job is mainly to train these people on various aspects of style. So I'm really looking forward to this talk, because I think we do get to hear a lot from the science side. Now, this is the time to hear from the style side, and I'm sure there is a little bit of science behind style as well. So Manav, over to you.
Thank you, Nilesh. And I would really like to thank Nielsen for such a wonderful talk, because, when he started, he kind of initiated the movement with stylistic as an element. So I think, it kind of gives me, a slight edge. Now, I don't know if it's an edge, but yes, more importantly, what is coming across is that even if we are talking about, for example, lenses, especially where you have higher powers for your customers. So that is also one aspect where aesthetical elements become really, really important. So that is the reason when we are talking about style, it holds no less value. And I'm sure that, when we talk about science, there is a science, as Nilesh is also mentioning, that there is a science behind the stylistic element as well. That science probably is from the perspective of maybe frames, or, let's talk about the data analysis and, the trends and things like that. So maybe a little different than the optometry, but more importantly, it does have an element of science as well. So like Nilesh has already introduced me, so I've been working for about 16 plus years now, and it's been quite a journey with Luxottica. And I'm sure that, when we are talking about style, Luxottica kind of, looking at the gamut of brands or the plethora of brands that Luxottica has, I think it kind of comes really handy with Luxottica. So that's the reason why when we talk about brands, when we talk about style, I think there's a lot to talk, there's a lot to mention. So I would first, go onto the slide, which is more of a paradox. Now, when I say paradox, we have always two sides of it. So is sunglass only a style accessory? Because a lot of people do think like that it is more of a style accessory. But yes, like Nielsen has already shared in his slides, that you have a lot of countries where you have a heavy UV exposure, and India being one of them, because of its tropical placement or geographical placement. I think India also is one country where this information holds true. So we cannot assume that it is only a style accessory. It also has necessities alongside. And likewise, when we look at frames, it cannot only be because of the necessity. It also has an element of style. So for example, there have been lately a lot of advertisements that you may have seen across that comes across with the fact that it is not only about wearing a frame, it is also about changing it regularly, like you change your attires, like you change your apparels, because it is for a different situation, it is for a different reason, it is for, let's say, a different occasion. So that's the reason why these paradoxes are still there. We'll try and manage to minimize it. I don't know if we can kind of completely eradicate that, but yes, more importantly, like I said, it is really important to understand that there is an element of style as well in the frames or the optical side of the business as well. So this is a small study that was done in about 5 countries, where we wanted to understand from the consumers themselves that when it comes to their personal image. Now, so for example, when we are looking at doctors, most of us would think that doctors, or maybe any kind of a professional, probably would go really well with maybe a semi-rimless or a rimless frame. You could see that, I've been wearing that too. So probably this is also one factor that, there are some notions that have come to our mind in such a way that, they've become fixated. Now, why fixated? Because we've seen this for quite some time. So and we kind of associate that with the kind of role that the person plays. So we wanted to understand from people that, what is it, when it comes to their personal image, what kind of impacts a lot, is it the dress, the attire, or maybe, for example, the watches or accessories, eyeglasses or sunglasses. The first thing that you look at somebody with, or the immediate look that you understand from a person is of the face and not of the physical body. So that is the reason the moment you're looking at someone's face, it says that, eyeglasses, 56% of the time people said that, it conveys my personal image. So, then following it up with sunglasses being 41%, then accessories and shoes and dresses, and of course the hat or maybe any other, accessory that people would want to wear. So it does make us recognizable. Then, of course, it has a large impact on the other person about making observations about us. So, for example, I today am wearing this. So in case if I try and remove this and probably wear something like this, maybe, if you're looking at me for the first time, probably the person may seem like that this guy is probably a lot geeky. Or in case if I'm wearing something probably a little more roundish, it may kind of sound, and maybe with some colors, it may kind of look as if, I'm too fashionable. So that is where, when we talk about this, it kind of defines that what kind of a personality I may or may not be. So it does differentiate us from others as well. So very important there. So when we come to this kind of a conclusion, we also understand that, a lot of people who've been buying from our stores, we have, for example, when we look at our independent stores category, there is, it holds true for most of us, but for independent stores, it kind of makes a lot more sense that, when we look at the amount of repeat customers or loyalists to our stores, there are a lot of them. So when we talk to them about one kind of a frame, sometimes the notion comes in as if, I already have something like this. Do I really need to invest more? So that is the reason why sometimes, changing that as per the occasional nuances, occasional dynamics, it kind of helps us, get more traction from the customer, get more attention, and also an opportunity for us to kind of put through our products. One, two, gives him or her an opportunity to try something different for a different occasion. So that's the reason why, all these things become really important. Now, when we look at style, there are a lot of things that, we can talk about. So from the point of, the overall behavior or personality, or maybe the stylistic element, and also the facial physiognomy of a person. Now, there are four different, parameters, where we try to understand that what kind of stylistic product should we look at for delivering to the customer. So when we look at observations, there are a lot of observations. We probably would have been making it, in our own sense inside the store. For example, it could be based on the facial expressions, the size, or probably the cheekbones, or for example, the hairstyle, the eyebrows. There are a lot of parameters, which are a part of the physiognomy. Now, do we also consider, I know that sometimes it becomes really difficult to kind of, talk about the skin undertone, but yes, skin undertone also plays an important role. So for example, facial physiognomy would kind of talk about two different ways of looking at a person's style. It could be something that goes in contrast. It could be something that goes in coherence. Now, that depends on the consumer, that, what kind of facial expressions does he want to portray. So that is the reason when facial physiognomy comes across, there are a few things that becomes really, really important. But other than that, when you're trying to understand the customer, so, okay, now I can give you a lot of examples here. So for example, the first one that I would give you is of a doctor. The personality of a doctor is something that is really subtle, something that kind of comes across as a really professional person, somebody that, people look up to. So that is the reason why personality becomes really important. And if you may, okay, I'll share with you one of my example. I went to one of the hospitals. I think this story is about good 6-7 years ago. when I went to a doctor for my son, and he was a pediatric, and he was actually wearing a red shirt with a cartoonic tie with a lot of color and loud typology of frame. So the first instance when I saw him, I was like, okay, have I come to the right place? Why? Because in certain kind of an environment, sometimes you start expecting that, okay, this person would be looking something like this, or should look something like this. So that is why the personality also becomes really important. But on the other note, I may have my interpretations about different scenarios as a wearer of the product. So that is why my attitude will also play an important role. So when I say my attitude, there could be different moods that I may have basis different situations. So that is why I also need to understand that if I am also pitching the consumer basis the variation in the moods that he may have depending on the circumstances that he may get into. So when you're trying to try and understand his personality, I think personality becomes really important from the point of profession, and attitude becomes really important from the point of his persona. So that is why his moods, his circumstances, his personal attributes, that becomes really, really important. And then basis these functionality, you may reach the top of the pyramid, where you are in a position to advise the customer the right set of frames, the right style of product, with the colors, with the size, everything put together. So stylistic element is also factored in from the point of let's say the lenses. So like for example, Nielsen was talking about the higher powers. You may have, for example, today bifocal lenses, or maybe uniform lenses, which are known as progressive ones. So why are we moving from for example, from, let's say, a bifocal appearance to maybe an appearance which is more uniform in nature, which is progressive? So because sometimes it is functional, but yes, it is also aesthetical. So it does make a quick difference between the vision. But I also understand that sometimes from the perspective of, let's say, the aesthetical element, it may not look nice to a few people. So that is the reason why both of them put together kind of gives a 360-degree approach to the client, that okay, I'm looking at both the parameters together. Now, what can come across, from the point of stylistic elements? So, for example, it could be the face shapes, which can be further divided into multiple. So, a lot of people, a lot of organizations have different way to depict it. So, there are some faces which are rounded in nature, and there are some faces which are angular in nature. Now, likewise, when you look at the frame shapes, they're also in the similar category, which are both angular and rounded. So do you want to give something in coherence? Is the consumer wanting to buy something in coherence, or is he wanting to buy something in contrast? Likewise, the skin undertone, which is what I spoke about. There are some colors that will go in coherence, which will blend as per the skin color. And there are some products that will actually stand out. Now, why would they stand out? It is because of the fact that, you probably may want to stand out because it's a particular occasion that you want to participate in. So other than that, there are facial features. Now, sometimes we limit our conversations to the facial shapes, and we do not extend them further to maybe facial features. For example, the length of the nose, or maybe the temples. So for example, when we look at temples, just to give you a small anecdote, if somebody has a longer face, because the maximum part of the skin is visible, it is always recommended that you give him a thicker temple, and that too in the middle fitting of the frame, not on the top of the fitting. Because sometimes, aesthetically, when you are trying to give something which is on a topper fitting, specifically to a long face person, it kind of blends into the hair. And, it doesn't make a difference in terms of the visibility towards the side profile of a person. Then, for example, making the person feel, the aesthetical element by asking him to fit his frame just below the eyebrows. So then, for example, the dark circle. So there are a lot of elements that I can talk about in this case. Then moving on, we also sometimes in other countries, in India that probably is a little less specific, but yes, in a lot of countries you have different eye colors as well. So eye colors also play an important role. The side profile plays an important role. The length of the nose plays an important role. So these are some factors, when you talk about. Now, other than that, how many of us try and follow, for example, uh, uh, let's say somebody who's an expert in talking about fashion as an appeal. Now, in case if we are trying to follow them, they generally would not talk about one element in particular. They generally would talk about something that is 360-degree or more holistic in nature. Now, when we are, for example, wearing probably red kind of t-shirt or maybe with a blue jeans because I'm going with my friends on maybe a vacation, would I still want to wear my semi-rimless or let's say a complete rimless frame with black color? I may want to change it because my occasion here is more fun in nature. So that is the reason why when we are talking about expressing something, that is not only expressed by the dress codes, it is also expressed by your facial features where the frame is going to sit. And when you have your frame sitting on the face, you may want to probably try a round product. Why? Because today, when we talk about the latest fashion, Nielsen was actually talking about it. I would buy some points from there and add on to that. That when we are talking about the expression, today the trend is vintage. Today the trend is geometries. So that is the reason why people are coming to Nielsen or maybe all the optometrists where they're asking for bigger frames, the ones which are thicker in nature. Because if you see in fashion industry as well, you could see a lot of boot cuts or bell bottoms coming back. So that is the reason when we are talking about expression, it is not only about expressing a style, it is about expressing an emotion, the warmth. So that is the reason why it has to be something which is more 360-degree. It cannot be only delivered onto style or only delivered onto science, because then the experience is half cooked or half delivered. So that is the reason why the experience to deliver it completely 360-degree, you may also want to move both necessity and fashion together. So that is what I would want to rest my case as. So then at the same time, I would also want to summarize that, like said earlier, the observation is really important from the physiognomy perspective. Then you move on to understanding the personality. Then you move on to also understanding the attitude of the person, and then at the last is where you would have all the observations, all the things to talk about. When you probably can give even the repetitions of what customer said. You are denoting that why are you recommending this kind of a product to the consumer. So that is the reason why it is really important to kind of put things together and present it in a way that it becomes a holistic experience for the consumer. So that is it from my side. I would give my words to Nilesh to summarize or to talk about.
Yeah. Thank you
Thank you.
so thank you so much, Manav. I think that was really insightful. I mean, I personally learned so many new things. Definitely learned a new word, physiognomy. And as I expected, I did expect that there would be a bit of science behind style, and it seems that there is more than a bit of science
Yes,
in style, right?
absolutely.
And I also like the last part where, not last, throughout the session, you said that observation is one of the most important powers, and we need to use that from the style point of view. And it came through while Nielsen was talking as well. From a clinician point of view, also, I think observation is very, very important. So to become a successful professional, I think observation is one of the most important tools, right? Let's get into the discussion part now. And before we take a couple of questions from the audience, let me quickly introduce our panelists as well. We have Anantalakshmi. Anantalakshmi is currently heading the Education and Professional Services division of Essilor India. We also have Rushit Patel. He is the partner in Nagar Chashmagar, Ahmedabad. A little bit more about these two. Anantalakshmi, I think we know each other for many, many years. An excellent trainer in terms of ophthalmic lenses, and her knowledge of the ophthalmic lens industry is just unparalleled. We also have Rishit. Rishit, I know again very well because he at one point of time he was my student, and he was his enterprising skills were on display even when he was a student, and his love for business and ophthalmic lenses and optical dispensing was evident there as well. So I'm going to start with Rishit. Actually, Rishit, are you able to hear me? You can unmute yourself. Yeah. So just not a specific questions, but I just want to understand your views on the style and science part. If you want to share your views or your experience, in your optical business in terms of what is more important and how do you go about it, science and style.
As Nilsson and Manav said, that style and science should go together. Recently, I had an experience, as many of the kids come with glasses right now.
Mm-hmm.
So my first preference with the kids is let them choose the frame color. Okay. And get them habituated with that, because at the end of the day, they are going to wear the glasses. So let them choose the frame color. After that, we try to choose how the frame is fitting on the nose or at the end of the year. And regarding the science part, we will tell this to the parents how this lenses, or as the child is doing classes online, is going to require a good anti-reflection or a blue filter block lenses. So in this case, for kids, I usually give the first preference to the kids first for the selection of the color,
Mm-hmm.
rather than the parents deciding the frame for the kids.
So when you allow the child to select a color, you get a child's buy-in and the more compliant to wearing spectacles. Is it what you mean?
Yes. He tries to wear it more often when he tries to get to choose the frame.
Awesome. So there's a bit of parenting issue here as well, right? There is a tip for parenting as well.
Yes,
Thanks, Ushit. I'll come to Ananta. Ananta, your just quickly, if you want to, share your experience through your chats with various practitioners and people in business as well.
Thanks, Nilesh. I think wonderful talk by both of them. Let me just in short explain a customer journey. Basically, when they come to a practice, the first thing they do is to go and select a frame. Okay, so while they are actually looking in for a frame, okay, maybe it might be in terms of a style. They may select a rimless or a full frame or a semi-rimless, whatever be it.
Right.
So you can actually blend. So you need to observe the customer right from the time he enters till the time he leaves. So that is the way you can blend both. So for example, just giving you an example, suppose he selects a rimless frame. Now, why does he select? Because he doesn't want others to know that he's actually wearing a spectacle lens. He wants the lens to be the frame to be invisible, right? So that is the reason why he selects a rimless frame. Now, that can be a style point of view. So when you're going to talk about lenses, okay, to this person, you and suppose in case he's got a high power or something like that, or a mid-range power. So if you want to pitch in a high index to him, okay, so what you can do is you can compliment, he's already taken a style. You can always compliment saying that for the type of frame you have selected, I'm going to compliment you with a high index lens, and then put in the science pattern. So we need to be a very practical. We need to customize the way we communicate, whether it's a style or the science. So you can either go for the style and then blend it with the science, or you have the science and then you blend it with the style. So for example, another example which I would give you is the progressive lenses, which Manav said. Now, in terms of what we talk about is the science. We know, all of us know that progressive lens is very good for us because you get clear vision all distances, and to be very short, a progressive lens is something very mimicking like our crystalline lens, because in terms of accommodation, the accommodation helps us to see at all distances till the age of 40. So you're going to complement with a similar optics in terms of lenses, which is also going to help you to see at all distances. So that may be the science part. But absolutely, what is the style part? Like how he rightly said that it's going to be very, it's not going to have any lines, no jump effect, It's going to be giving a look of a single vision lens. So this is going to be a style part. So you need to have a good blend of style as well as science. I think there may be some few exceptions, but in our practice, most of the time whom we see, we can try to have a good balance between style and sense. Style and science, and how we portray it to our customer is what is the magic.
So basically, even if you pick one track, at some point of time, you have to incorporate the other track.
Yes,
only then it makes a complete recommendation. So you want beauty with the brain. You don't want just one of them. Okay. Lakshmi, you want to say something? You're raising your hand.
Yeah, I just have a small question to both the practitioners, Ruchit and Nielsen. Let's say, like, as a practitioner, you would recommend something, and if the patient wants a different style, for example, let's say a -10 or something like that in a rimless, how do you try and match your kind of recommendations and convince the person what's better for them, whether it's a full frame or a rimless? That's number one. Number two is especially prescriptions for a more wrapped, sports kind of a frame. There are certain things that we have to advise as practitioners. So how would you go about, mixing that style with whatever your recommendations are as a practitioner? Whoever wants to go first, that's fine.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so essentially with the rimless example, even the wrap, I like to preempt or really use your clinical knowledge to sort of tell the patient what they will expect. Okay, so from a appearance of their spectacles and visually as well. Okay, so you say to the person, okay, you're going to have you've got a high prescription, you have a rimless, rimless frame, the edge thickness will be visible. With an edge thickness, what that means is your peripheral vision will be affected. And even I'll try and demonstrate that and say, draw a picture, draw the hourglass and show them what it would look like. And, then talk to them about other options as well, sort of really so that there's no surprises when they pick up their glasses. You've really given them your expert knowledge, and it's up to them to whether they proceed with that. And the same with high wrap frames as well. Like, what I often say to people who choose a high wrap frame with a fairly high prescription, one of the things I say to them is that when you are using your glasses, you'll notice things in your periphery will move at a different speed to things in front. And that will often you'll sometimes feel a bit off balance and you'll feel uncomfortable. So so really I say to them, look, in my professional opinion, I feel that these won't be suitable for you, but ultimately it is up to the patient. So really is to advise them. Sometimes you advise them as strongly as possible and almost take them away from that option. But really just so they're informed and you've given them the clinical perspective. Rashid, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, Rashid, you want to add?
No, Nielsen perfectly said that. Usually in my practice with -10, I usually don't recommend at all. Or if the patient wants it, I directly say no to them.
Strict parent, huh?
Strict parent. And for the wrap thing, I usually prescribe till -4 or -5, not above that. Because after that, as Nielsen said, the speed at which he goes, the difference in the speed, it will be much more.
Okay. So just one quick point blank question to Rushit and Manav. And quick answer. The glasses you are wearing right now, more of style or more of science?
Both.
Only the style.
What about you, Rushit?
Mine is both.
Yours is both.
I like the way
well played.
Change the glasses. I just loved it.
Yeah, I know he has multiple glasses.
Definitely, please don't wear the other one with a geeky look.
So I'm going to take a couple of questions from the audience, and one of them is about progressive addition lenses. Maybe Rushit and Nielsen, you can take it again, and Ananta, you can add as well. The question is, many users complain about that they want to use progressive addition lenses, but they fail because of difficulty in adaptation. Are you still facing such challenges in your practice?
Would you like to go first, Rashid?
Yeah, Rashid, maybe you can go first. Indian perspective first.
Last few years, it has been very less due to the adaptation thing. because we usually tell the patient what all things are to be taken care of before giving a progressive lens.
Right. So you are not facing too many issues right
No.
now. So is it because of the designs are improving, or is it because the patients are already aware and they are prepared to, give in that much time for adaptation? What would you, attribute this to? Maybe Nielsen, you can also add after Rishit.
I think it's because of more of a softer design, and the
Okay.
patient knows how much time it will take usually to adapt it.
Okay. You want to add, Nielsen?
Yeah, one of the key things that we do is we actually, for new progressive wearers and people that have had problems previously, I'd book an appointment when they collect the glasses to actually fit them to them. And again, inform them as much as possible. So you tell them what to expect, how you should be using them, and then you take control of that situation. So when they come to pick up their glasses, you put the glasses on them and you say, okay, look in the distance, tilt your head back. What do you see? Tilt your head down. What do you see? Move the book to the right, look to the left. So really then they start to get that understanding of how the lenses work. But for us, booking an appointment for collection of new progressive wearers is a really little bit different. It's a little bit of a differentiator to the competition. It's a nice idea as well.
Awesome. So you think the patient education and demonstration, these are the things probably helping you?
100%, because I noticed there's some questions about competition and whatnot. And, the markets are very competitive, but if you can really demonstrate your knowledge, it sets you apart. A lot of the businesses are high volume. They don't have time to speak to customers or patients about all of these things. If you are able to talk to them and they feel really comfortable, they take your recommendations on board. They trust you. So, those are really, really key things, Nilesh.
Absolutely. I think that's an important insight and important tip to all the practitioners as well. So Ananta, in your experience, are you getting too many complaints nowadays? What is your experience from the other side?
I mean, I think the question partly has been answered by Rishit as well. The first thing is, yes, today the complaints have reduced quite a lot. The dispensing techniques are really picking up. Today, practitioners are very confident about fitting progressive lenses. That is point number one. Second, today, whatever lenses we have got a lot of technologies inbuilt in it, which is basically for the current wearers, which has inbuilt of their lifestyle and their expectations also. And a third important thing is we always encourage the ECPs to do a demonstration, like how Nielsen rightly said, especially if they are the first time wearers of progressive lenses. It's very important for us to tell them how the lenses actually work, because when we have explained during our this thing, we just talk about in distance, intermediate and near. For a customer, this makes no sense. So you nearly need to explain to them, give them the demonstration how the lenses would work. And I think the demonstration plays a very, very important role to get their satisfaction. So when they leave your clinic, they should really know how these lenses would work. I think that is where the things would work well for them.
Thanks so much. And I think, so one important aspect is the knowledge and skills of the practitioners are also improving, and maybe Essilor and including Ananta, Shajan, and I think Nielsen, you and I also can take a little bit of credit for that, shall we?
Why not?
Of course.
After doing so many
VAPs and EPEPs and everything. So
yeah, of course. So Lakshmi, are there any questions you want to pick from the Facebook chat, because we are about there now?
Paula wanted to ask one question. I thought we'll take that last one. And I wanted to remind everybody that there's a survey which they need to fill to get the certificate of attendance. Paula, your question?
Yeah, hi everybody. So this is to all the panelists and the speakers. What are your thoughts about dispensing multiple pairs? So maybe Manav can start, because the style aspect does take place in this, and then Nielsen and others can chip in.
Thank you. It's an important question for two very valid reasons. The first reason being that, most of the time when we talk about dispensing multiple frames, it may not be only from the point of style. It can also be from the point of first time usage. A lot of people, for example, who are not in the habit of wearing a spectacle, it becomes really difficult to kind of, ascertain that, where have I kept my frames? Probably I would forget it in my office, or maybe in the car seat, or probably at my home. So multiple dispensing is not only helping the consumer change the style, but also ensures that, he doesn't compromise on his vision. So that is the reason why, the first and foremost practice that must be followed is to do with the fact that, everybody who's wearing it for the first time should be offered a second pair, which probably should be a spare. Then the second aspect that comes in is, of course, of the stylistic element. So we are not wearing similar clothes every day, not like Mark Zuckerberg for sure, because he wears the gray t-shirts all the time. But yes, more importantly, like I said, that, I'm not wearing a blue t-shirt every day, or probably a white shirt every day, or something like that. So if we are trying to change our appearance based on the occasion, why not eyeglasses? Because eyeglasses, like I said, conveys a personal image. So when it is conveying a personal image, I may want to portray a different image because it's a different scenario for me. So, in case if I'm a jovial person, otherwise, wearing maybe a thick frame, red color, and if I'm going for an interview, I may not want to portray that because I probably want that job. So that's the reason. So I would kind of keep changing the environments, and hence I should keep changing my products as well. It could be absolutely in line with the attire. So multiple selling is really important. The bigger worry is that we are hesitant that we may lose on the first sales. So that is the reason why sometimes we do not end up pitching for the second one. So I think, the timing becomes really important in this case, that when are you approaching the consumer for that? And what are you trying to explain? Are you trying to explain that we are another product service provider, or we are trying to ascertain that there is another need that you may not know right now, and we are trying to put that need forth, and that is why you should look up for buying another pair. So that is why I would always say that, it is really important to talk about multiple products. I generally have this notation when I say that if you are dispensing an optical frame, you should leave the consumer with a question, and that question is that, we know that we are in a geographical placement where we have the highest exposure of ultraviolet as a country. And I'm sure that, since you know this, you must be wearing a sunglass whenever you're out in the sun, even if it is, let's say, an optical frame. So, even then we have a possibility of making an optical sun. So, but then wearing it is really important. So, because we are placed in such a country where we are getting a lot of early presbyopic cases, early cataract cases, it is because of, one of the reason is because we are highly exposed to ultraviolet. So do we put it like this? So putting it right is also very important. So that is what I would say on this, and leave the dice to you.
I completely agree. And tying the clinical findings, or, what we mentioned before about sun exposure, to what you see on the eye. But again, to emphasize the history taking to identify patients' needs, if they are playing the piano, or they do more than 2 or 3 hours of computer work a day, they're presbyopic, already that's 3 pairs of glasses just there. I mean, they can't really, progressives they could possibly use for playing the piano, but then you say, well, look, if it's something you enjoy, you want to optimize your vision, here's a solution. And often I'll get a trial frame and I'll demonstrate that to them. I'll say, okay, if you want an extended focus lens with a low shift, I'll put the full ad in, put a minus 0.75 on the top, and show them that that range extends, and say, with a progressive lens, you are great for everyday use. Go to the shops, you want to read a price, you want to pick up your phone, you want to see far away. But then, so progressive lenses are great. But then if you think about if you're going to sit in front of a computer for 2 or 3 hours a day, extended focus lenses are great. And then, you might even have a single vision for the piano, for instance, or an extended focus. Right. So really, that is absolutely critical in my mind, is to, I've had a patient last week that bought 5 pairs of glasses. I didn't expect it, but I said, here are your options. Makes you worry about if you got your refraction right, but you know, but otherwise, yeah, it's you know, you sometimes feel like you can lose some more hair about that, but it's more you know, those are really critical things around multiple pairs.
Yeah, and I would probably slip in a pair of contact lenses as well.
Yeah, last option.
Right.
Okay.
Great,
Rishit, you want to
great
add, or are we
session.
done with this question?
Yeah, I think great session. Thank you, Nielsen. Thank you, Manav. I think everybody kind of enjoyed the session.
Yeah.
And we'll also be sharing the recording of the session with everybody so that, you know, it reaches as many people as possible.
Lakshmi, just to add on to one last thing, you know, we have a beautiful learning platform called Leonardo. So probably, you know, all the eye care practitioners, you know, who wants to have an access to this kind of an information can actually use this as a platform to learn a lot more, not only about science, but also a little about style. Yeah.
Awesome. So I think, thank you, Mano. Thanks, Nielsen, all the way from down under. Thanks, Rishit and Ananta. I think I thoroughly enjoyed this session, and I'm sure those who have attended, they would have enjoyed as well. Please submit your feedback form, the survey form. That's important. And gentlemen and ladies, we had a wonderful time. So one takeaway message probably that, you know, style and science, they are two sides of the same coin. So it's not like two different things. Every time you have to consider both. You cannot just pick one and go ahead with that. I think we need to have a wonderful blend of these two to have a successful practice as well as successful patient experience or consumer experience, right? So let's leave you on that note. All the very best, guys. Take care of yourselves and happy dispensing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.